Thank you. Thank you for coming. I know it's the last presentation of the day here at reInvent before we go to replay, and I'm just amazed at the number of people in the room here. So thank all of you for taking the time and sticking with us and coming to this session at the end of the day. My name is Rod Wallace. I'm the General Manager of Security Lake, and I'm going to be presenting today with Jonathan Garzon, who is the Product Manager for Security Lake. We are going to cover a few things today. One of them is that I'm going to talk with you about the challenges that CISOs and security teams face as they try and execute on their mission. I was a CISO before I joined AWS for a large FTSE 50 company in the UK, and have lived the life of a practitioner and worn the hat. And coming to Amazon was so great to get to build a solution like Security Lake. We're going to talk to you about how what the route is to modern security analytics and how we do that. Jonathan is going to take you in excruciating detail through Security Lake and how you configure it. And then we'll wrap up with some conclusions and comments here. So first thing to cover off today is when I speak with customers, and I think about my own past, 201, they just tell us that, man, enterprise-wide security data analysis is really challenging. It's always been a challenge, but it's getting more and more and more challenging. And so when we double-click on that a little bit and say, talk to me more about that. What is the issue that you're seeing? What are they? They really talk about four things. And I'll see if the heads start nodding in the room here. The first one is just the growing volume of security data out there. If you look at the number of logs, the volume of logs, and you try and look at this across your entire enterprise, especially as you go from on-prem or you're hybrid or you're all in on cloud, the volumes have taken off massively. Our application developers are making more and more logs available. Yes, thank you. We like that. The security people love that. But man, they're just more and more verbose. One of the advantages of cloud, I loved it when I moved our workloads to cloud, was the insane amount of transparency that gives you. All that shadow IT, which I was struggling or you struggle to find, suddenly is completely visible. But with that transition as well, all the services that our builders use when they're putting workloads on cloud give us all even more logs. And so we hear from customers many times that the volume of logs that they're seeing have gone from gigabytes per day. We have customers now at terabytes per day and petabytes of data. And they struggle with just this, how to handle this volume of log data. So that's theme number one. Theme number two is the inconsistency and lack of completeness in the data. And one of the things that we say, and Steve Schmidt, our CISO here, and CJ talk about is, once you fail to collect a log, you're never getting that visibility back again. Gaps in your logs are terrible or failing to get them. So the dynamic agility that we get by cloud, which we all love, is kind of a two-edged sword, and that is, as security teams, we need to keep up with all of the workloads and all of the accounts that are created and the changes that happen there. And so tracking that is super tough, which leads to, again, gapping in your logs if you don't do it properly. Some of the security solutions we use tell you they'll make the log data available to you, but sometimes it's only for 30 days. Any security team knows that you can't just have 30 days visibility into your data and 30 days in your past. So there's a notion of how do I get a longer period of collection of my logs. And last but not least, and this is one where the well-meaning people who send logs and build logs, they send them to us, but what they do is, because every one of them is in a different format, DNS logs, for example, doesn't matter who makes them, they're all different. It puts the burden of uncoupling all of this data and trying to make sense of it on the security team. And so the queries that you try and build are tough. And I know in my past, when we built the queries, I always had this niggling doubt in the back of my head that, did we get it right? Because of just the heterogeneity in the data. And so inconsistency, incompleteness in the data, another set of worries. Big one. This is a really big one that CISOs and security teams tell us about a lot, which is they really want to own their own security data. They want to own their own security data. And a number of customers find themselves in a place where they're using an analytics solution, and that analytics solution says, hey, let me collect your logs for you. Or we'll just ingest the logs to us. And what does this result in? It means that your security data is in their application. And because it's in that application, guess what it's insulated from? It's insulated completely from the rest of the security industry. Now, and what I mean by that is there's so much innovation happening right now in the security industry. There are interesting applications that you might want to run on your data. But guess what? Your data is stuck somewhere else. You can't use it anymore. So it means you fail to be able to ride that innovation curve. And that's what they say to us. And imagine that you want to start using ML. And you want to be able to train ML broadly on all of the security signal that you have, but also retrospectively through time to build that body of knowledge. How do you do that if you don't own your own data? And that's what we hear again, theme number 3. Theme 4, last one. Anybody who has tried, and a lot of customers have tried to do this, is, hey, I'm going to roll my own solution to handle all of this. It's pretty easy to get started doing that, but given things that we've spoken about just here previously, like your infrastructure changing and a lot of these things, you find out very, very quickly that you start to have to add more and more and more people into doing things like tracking infrastructure changes or trying to normalize the data or trying to get performance of the data collection up or building alarming for, are my log sources working properly? And suddenly this burden of how to do this crashes down on you. And for CISOs, and all of us have budgets, you find that more and more of your budget is going towards data wrangling, and less of it is going to the actual, finding the needle in the needle stack that you're trying to, get at. And so the analytics is really suffering because all that resource is going into that data wrangling. So when we speak with customers, and it's kind of why we're here today, is imagine if there was a service which would automatically build a security lake in your own account, okay? In your own account that you own and control, that automatically centralizes and normalizes all of that data from across your entire enterprise, not just on cloud, on-prem, SaaS, wherever you want. Third, that it provides a long-term store for your data and optimizes the storage on that so that you can decide how long you want to keep records hot, warm, or cold for easy retention. And last but not least, gives you that freedom of choice for analytics and the things you want to do. So as I said, that's sort of why we're here today. I'm going to talk to you about 2 things that we've done after listening to customers they asked us to do. The very first one is getting after that normalization problem. We, after listening to customers, they said, could you advocate on our behalf? You're AWS, you carry some weight. Can you help us with normalizing security data? And so we went out and spoke to a number of other companies in the security industry to say, hey, this is what we're hearing from our customers, and they really want to have their security data normalized. And I can tell you those conversations were basically pushing on an open door. There was no resistance really there. They said they're hearing the exact same thing from their customers, that they want this. And so in working with Splunk, who is one of the companies that I was speaking with, it turns out that they had a really cool schema that they had inherited from work with Symantec and Broadcom. And they said that they would be willing to put that into open source, completely unrestricted, if the security industry would rally around it to solve this problem. So at Black Hat this year, AWS and Splunk, coupled with 16 other companies, formed something called the Open Cybersecurity Schema Framework. It's a completely open source project aimed at normalizing security data from an open schema. It's run under Apache, and there are no strings attached to this at all. It's Splunk completely donated the intellectual property. The whole point of the schema is, first of all, to have crowdsourcing of the best way to do this. The idea of once you have data in the same format, it's really going to make ingestion and analytics better. A flywheel effect and a virtuous circle if vendors start producing data in this. It starts to create gravity, and everybody will start using this. And it's an open standard. We started with 18 companies. I can tell you that that momentum has been really good. There are now more than 60 participants in the contribution side of things, and it's not just security companies. We have obviously security companies in there, but we have educational institutions, governments, and enterprises themselves. Large enterprises, medium enterprises, who are there. Why? They're there because they're thinking of using OCSF as the internal data schema and data model for their company. So we've seen a lot of momentum in OCSF, and we've also seen it going some interesting directions. So I would say if you're interested at all in this, go to ocsf.io. Anybody can join, be a contributor, just follow along. It's there for all of us, frankly. And so that's the first thing we did. The second thing, the main event sort of today, is on Tuesday, Adam announced Amazon Security Lake. And this is a new service that a team that I lead built. And it is there to answer the rest of that what if you had a service, that slide that I put up there. So Amazon Security Lake is a service which centralizes or gives you the ability to centralize your security data. You don't have to if you don't want to, but you can collect it in regions, centralize it how you wish, whether it's on cloud, on-premise, SaaS, wherever you want. The other piece is it optimizes your data. So any AWS sources, for example, that come in are automatically transformed to OCSF, and the storage format is Parquet, and we have normalization in there so that it's query ready. The file sizes are optimized for querying, et cetera. And last but not least, because you own your own data, again, I want to reiterate this data lake, Security Lake automatically creates a lake in your account. So it's really orchestrating things. You own the data. It's in S3. So that means you can pick any solution you want to integrate, operate on that data. There are a lot of companies that have worked with us and are going to, and have built integrations. Jonathan's going to talk about that a lot more. So to get into the details now about Security Lake, and I promise you it'll be excruciating detail, I'm going to bring up Jonathan Garzon, our product manager.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Really delighted to be here. We're going to go into more details about how the approach we took to build Security Lake and how we build a purpose-built lake for security use cases so that you can keep ownership of your data, but focus on analysis of that data and not data wrangling. So we took the approach of building Security Lake as out of proven AWS services, scalable services like Amazon S3, Lake Formation, EventBridge, Lambda, that runs in your account, but we are orchestrating on your behalf. We're managing the functions providing you with high-level control that allows you to manage, sorry, I did not move the slides. Where we are managing for you the main functions of the data lake, which are ingestion on the left, data access control, and lifecycle management, so that you get the service of the lake without having to manage yourself the individual components that are being orchestrated to deliver the service. In Security Lake, all your data, as Rod mentioned, is using Open Cybersecurity Schema framework as the schema, so you can run a query on your data, for example, DNS data, across different sources and domains. You can run the same query on Route 53 and logs coming from your bind servers, for example. And the data is optimized For storage and query efficiency, Rod also talked about that. We're using Apache Parquet, which compresses your data up to 90%. We're partitioning the data, we're batching the data, so we're compacting the data so the files are efficiently used for queries. And we're managing the life cycle of your data, meaning that we are providing you with ways to centralize your data, to make it easy for your analytics tools to query the data, but also meeting your compliance standards that, for example, GDPR, for example, so you can keep separately your European data from your US or Asian data. Last but not least, we're also maintaining for your retention settings, so you can collect more data for longer. We're essentially orchestrating for you S3 retention settings so that you can roll up data to different storage classes and benefit from the cost saving while still have all this data available to you. If we look at the ingest side of things, we made it extremely easy for you to collect first your AWS sources. Literally in a few clicks, you are able, through Security Lake, to collect data from across all your accounts, all regions, for important security services that produce security-relevant logs. At Preview, which we are starting today, we started Tuesday, we provide automatic collection of these services, Amazon VPC, Amazon S3, CloudTrail, Lambda, Route 53, all important services that produce security-relevant data. And we also have, through an integration with Security Hub, automatic collection of security findings coming from 8 AWS services that includes Amazon Guard Duty or Detective, IAM Access Analyzer, and over 50 partner security solutions that are integrated with Security Hub. All of that is available in Preview. But we know that all your infrastructure is not running on AWS, and you have also infrastructure that spans through on-prem, other cloud services, other cloud providers. And we have worked with our partners to make it easy for you to get all their data into your lake without you having to manage the ETLing of that data. And I'll come back to that a little bit on the partner side. And this is your data lake. It's running in your account, and you can add your own data as easily as partner or any pre-integrated data. Once your data is in your lake, it's normalized, standardized, you can easily share it with your analytics solution of choice. It's very simple. You simply select which sources you want to share, which one you want to analyze, which subscriber or consumer of data you want to share the data with, and Amazon Security Lake makes it happen for you. It builds the pipeline, it handles the permissions so that you don't have to do it, but you get the benefit of using your data in different analytics tools. You can choose to use your data with AWS analytics tools, and also here we worked with partners to make it readily easy for you to use your data through these solutions, and I'm going to talk about that right now. We're happy to share that at Preview, already 37 partner companies across the security industry have leaned in and started integrating with Security Lake. So these partner solutions, which are either established vendors, startups, some of them are system integrators, have all contributed and integrated in ways either to provide data to Security Lake or to ingest and consume data from Security Lake. And this is really just the beginning, and we are talking to many more, and our goal is to make it easy for you to use in your lake, collect any of the security data that you need, and use any security solutions to analyze it. So now I'm sure that you want to see how easy it is to use and to get started with Security Lake. We're certainly very excited to do that. And that's what we're going to do over the next few slides. So first, the initial onboarding is 3 simple steps and gets you to collect all your AWS logs across your infrastructure. The first step to provide you with cross-account management is that we integrate with AWS organization. So the first step is to delegate an administrator that is going to be in charge of managing the overall enterprise-wide collection. This is very similar to the experience with existing services like Guard Duty or Detective. You simply elect an account, typically the security team account, which is going to own the data lake and control logging across all the account of the organization. The second step is to define what you want to collect. And you have a choice that allows you to determine which sources you want to collect, in which regions you want to collect them, and which accounts. But again, here we made it very simple for you to collect everything. And our goal is to make it possible for you to gather complete data across your infrastructure. So the default choice are collect all log sources that are supported across all regions, across all accounts. We even by default have an option to auto-enable logging for new accounts that show up in your organization. So so you can chase, you don't have to chase anymore new accounts that are not that are not known by the security team and that are using services that could cause a threat to your organization. And the third and final step is simply to define where you're going to centralize the data, if you choose so, and the retention settings that you want to apply to that data. So to do the centralization, you simply create what we call roll-up domains, where you define a set of regions that are contributing to a central region. And that allows you to centralize data in different geographies, again, to make it easy for subscribers to use that data and meeting your compliance constraints. Also dealing with disaster recovery use cases where you want your data to be duplicated. This is underlying all using S3. We just make it very simple for you to declare what you want, and we're managing the infrastructure for you. The storage classes is also a high-level management configuration of what you would configure in S3, which is the time of the transition into different storage classes that you can use to move data into cheaper classes and expire your data at your desired pace. And after these 3 simple steps, which actually is literally 3 clicks, you are done with your onboarding. What it means is that your data starts flowing from all your accounts, all regions, all services that you've configured into your AWS S3 buckets, your Amazon S3 buckets. And you have, after this point, the peace of mind that you're collecting everything that you need to cover an investigation or for future access. There is absolutely no pipeline to build. Everything happens in the background. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But before, the other beauty of using the set of Amazon services that we're using in your account is that your data is immediately queryable. The data that you're collecting through the few onboarding steps that we've shown is cataloged automatically for you. And by opening your Athena console, you can actually discover the sources that have been collected and immediately run queries, OCSF queries, on the data. Here, a query that show traffic between 2 endpoints. The queries are using the OCSF format. We publish a few examples for all the log sources, but the community is going to be able to share different queries for different scenarios. Let's get under the hood. So what happened when the few moments after you click through the create button? We created for you across your regions AWS buckets and configured the retention settings, the replication rules to match your expectations in terms of roll-up and retention settings. We enable logging across all regions and accounts and resources to meet your expectations. And we keep pace with the growing infrastructure that you have as new accounts are discovered or new resources of the services that you're using are created, for example, new VPC. You don't have anymore to configure each of these resources individually for logging. This is all managed for you. We also create data pipeline that run outside of your infrastructure, outside of your account, that automatically transform the data, partition it to OCSF and Parquet, without having you to handle this complexity. And we create the glue table that catalog your data, make it discoverable and usable by services like Athena, and keep the pace with new data that comes in and update of the partitions. But that's not all. This is AWS data, and you can actually stop here. This is already a good set of security services and data that you may need for your investigations. But we know that, again, you're not using just AWS, so you may want to bring your on-prem data, you may want to bring your security, your firewall data, your identity data, and we provide you easy ways to do that by creating and registering sources that you bring outside of the pre-integrated sources using Amazon Security Lake. So you do that through simple steps. You simply define the identity of the source provider and the storage and the event class, OCSF event class or log category that you're bringing. And by clicking create, we essentially create for you a role that needs to be assumed by the source provider to write your data directly in S3 in OCSF and Parquet format. And again, we worked with a few industry partners to have them directly write into your bucket using these roles in the OCSF and Parquet format. Now, all your data is in one place. You've added AWS data and custom data or external data, third-party data, your own application logs. And now what you want is share this data with security solutions so that you can analyze that. And we provide two high-level ways to do that. Again, you don't have to get into the complexity of creating resources, but we provide, you select, when you share your data, the mode of sharing that you want to enable. It's either a stream of new data notifications. That is a pretty common pattern where S3 notify the subscriber that new data is available, and the subscriber or consumer of data can fetch data from S3. That's, again, a very typical integration pattern that exists and that we make it easy for you, meaning that you don't have to create those resources. You don't have to create IAM roles, S3 notifications, event bridge, SQS queues. We create all of that for you, and we pass you the information so you can configure your subscriber. The second data access pattern that you can configure in Security Lake is what we call query access, which is a more novel integration pattern that allows your consumer and data subscribers to query the data in place. So they don't have to pre-ingest anything to be able to fetch data from your lake. We're using lake formation to do that, which provide cross-account table sharing. And again, this is a new model that enable new business models and new use cases where, for example, you can, from your SIEMs or security solutions, fetch data on demand to carry an investigations or selectively hydrate your security solutions to run a set of operations without having to ingest everything up front. You're selectively giving read access to your data in your lake using that mechanism. How it works, you configure a subscriber to share your data with a specific entity, security solutions. You give it a name. You select the sources that you want to select, that you want to share with this subscriber. And you select the identity of the subscriber, AWS identity, that this subscriber is going to use to access your data. You also select the data access mode, so which is either data and query or query. This here reads as S3 and lake formation. And you define some options like what type of notifications the subscriber is expecting, whether it's SQS or SNS. We have a few options here. You simply select these few options, and when you click create, what happens is that Security Lake create those resources and realize your expectation of making that data available to the subscriber. Create here in that example the IAM role that is needed to read from S3 and from SQS. Create the SQS resources. Hook EventBridge with the S3 so that EventBridge receive notifications from S3, send that to the SQS queue. And so you take these parameters and you simply have to paste them into your subscribers to realize that data, connection, integration. And with these simple steps, we give you the power of choosing the analytic solutions that you want to use with your data. Combine multiple solutions. And these are just a few real examples of partner solutions that shows dashboards and query of data coming from Security Lake directly in Parquet format. You can also build your own models and use your own analytics. So on the top right, we're showing an example of SageMaker that would, in this example, show a cluster of accounts based on their different behaviors. And the choices are unlimited here. So last but not least, you now may be asking yourself whether you can afford collecting all these logs. And that's a typical challenge that we hear from security team and CISOs, that they cannot afford to collect all their data. And they're often limited by their budget and cannot collect all they want. And here our mission really is to remove this sort of barrier so you can collect all the data you need and retain it for as long as you need. So we priced the service to achieve that. And so I'm happy to share that. First, there is no charge when you bring data, third-party data into the lake. There is no charge from Security Lake for using your data. The data is in your possession, in your S3 buckets, and there is no charge from Security Lake for using that data. You only pay a fee per gigabyte of data ingested from AWS services that we are normalizing for you. And that fee is a combination of the fee that you would pay those services, VPC, Flowlog, or CloudTrail, or the various sources that we are integrating with, plus a very small normalization fee of $3.5 per gigabyte, 3.5 cents per gigabyte in US regions. And you may still ask yourself whether this is going to be affordable and whether with the volume of data you have, you would be able to consume all the data you need. And here we've made it easy as well for you. First, during preview, which started on Tuesday, there is no cost for collecting the data. And even after general availability, we'll provide a 15-day free trial so you can actually collect everything, enable collection on your whole infrastructure, and predict the cost of collecting the data before you actually commit and make your decision. I need to add that the data is running in your account, the data lake run in your account, and so you have charges for using those services that we're orchestrating, S3 or EventBridge or Lambda, but this is the the charges that you are paying, you have the standard charges from AWS, and there is no overhead from Security Lake. With that, I want to thank you all to be here, and I would like to pass back the stage to Rod, who's coming back.
Hey, Jonathan, thank you. Why don't you hang on with me up here, because we'll have questions afterwards. So I hope you saw a lot of detail in there about how it works, but how easy it is to overcome a number of the issues that you and your proxies have essentially told us that are the problems you want to solve. So in conclusion, a couple of things here is I would hope that from this you see that at Amazon, at AWS, we consider security job zero internally. Protecting things is the very first thing we do. And we know for you, it's the same thing, job zero. And I hope from releases of services like Security Lake that you see that we're trying to make it easier and more cost effective for you to do job zero yourselves. We are continuing and will continue to advocate on your behalf with the security community and not just security itself, but also SaaS applications, enterprise applications, what have you, to produce logs in a standardized format natively. And in that chart that Jonathan showed of the 37 initial partners, I just want to make a point. They are all producing their data in OCSF. Security Lake is not touching it at all. That's the degree of their commitment to this and making it real. And where that community is growing, as I said, rapidly, and we will continue to advocate on your behalf to keep logs normalization happening. As Jonathan mentioned, Security Lake is available. It's been since Tuesday. It is in preview in the 7 regions. We can talk to you about 7 regions, and we would hope you would use it. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. There are a couple of things that we can do now. We can do some Q&A. And one of the things I would ask you all to do before you leave the session or after you leave the session is please fill out the feedback. We really do care about it. We take it to heart. Whether it's good or bad, we'll read it and pay attention. So I want to thank you all again for coming, and we'll go into Q&A right now. And our friend Ross, who's, by the way, our solution architect for Security Lake, has the microphone, so we'll take questions.